Drew Barrymore's life reads like a Hollywood screenplay, dramatic, painful, raw, and ultimately triumphant. Born into one of the most famous acting dynasties in the world, her path was marked by both privilege and chaos from the very beginning. But what makes Drew's story unforgettable is not where she came from, but how she rose from the ashes of her own destruction to become one of the most beloved, authentic, and resilient women in entertainment. She wasn't just born into fame, she had to fight to reclaim it, to redefine it, and to make it truly her own. From the moment she appeared on screen as a child in E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Drew captured the world's heart. Her innocence, charm, and natural ability made her a star overnight. At just 7 years old, she was walking red carpets and appearing on talk shows, while most children were learning how to ride a bike. But fame at such a young age came with a heavy price. Hollywood in the 1980s wasn't a playground for children, it was a whirlwind of attention, temptation, and pressure that could consume even the strongest adult. For Drew, it was the beginning of both her rise and her fall. Her home life was unstable. Born in 1975 into the famous Barrymore family, a lineage of actors that dated back generations, she inherited not just their talent but their tumultuous relationship with fame and addiction. Her father, John Drew Barrymore, was a talented but troubled actor. Her mother, Jade Barrymore, pushed her into show business at a young age, chasing the dream of success through her daughter. The lack of boundaries and stability left Drew exposed to a world she wasn't ready for. By the age of 9, she was drinking. By 10, she was smoking. And by 13, she was using cocaine. The world saw her as a star, but inside, she was a lost child trying to survive in an adult world that didn't care about her innocence. By 14, Drew Barrymore was a broken child star. In rehab, estranged from her parents, and written off by Hollywood. The same industry that had once adored her now turned its back. The newspapers labeled her washed up before she even reached high school. But what the world didn't know then was that this young girl was about to write one of the greatest comeback stories in entertainment history. Because beneath the chaos, Drew always had something that couldn't be destroyed, her spark. She once said, "Life is very interesting. In the end, some of your greatest pains become your greatest strengths." Those words became the foundation of her rebirth. When Drew was legally emancipated from her mother at age 15, she found herself completely alone, no guardian, no stable home, and no Hollywood safety net. But she also found something powerful: freedom. It was terrifying and liberating all at once. She worked odd jobs, struggled to pay rent, and faced the brutal reality that fame does not equal stability. Yet instead of giving up, Drew started rebuilding from scratch. Drew Barrymore's second act in life began not with applause, but with quiet reflection. After surviving the chaos of her early years, she had to learn something few celebrities ever master: how to live a normal life. For the first time, Drew had to rebuild her identity without the bright lights, the parties, or the distractions of fame. It wasn't easy. The world remembered her as the troubled child star, and many doubted she could sustain any real comeback. But Drew knew that her greatest power lay in her ability to surprise people, and herself. When she returned to Hollywood in her late teens, she was no longer chasing the approval of others. She was rebuilding from her heart. Every role she took was a step toward self-discovery. Her work in Boys on the Side, 1995, and Ever After, 1998, showed her evolution not just as an actress, but as a woman learning to love herself. Ever After, especially, became a turning point, a modern fairy tale about strength, independence, and self-worth that mirrored her own transformation. She wasn't the damsel waiting to be saved, she was the woman saving herself. Behind the scenes, Drew was learning the business side of Hollywood. Founding Flower Films was one of the boldest decisions of her career. She understood that true empowerment comes from ownership of your work, your image, and your story. Through Flower Films, Drew co-produced Never Been Kissed, 1999, a romantic comedy that felt deeply personal. The film's central message, that it's never too late to find confidence, love, or redemption, reflected her own journey. Audiences didn't just watch Josie Geller's story, they saw Drew's healing unfold before their eyes. Then came Charlie's Angels, 2000, a film that would change everything. Drew wasn't just starring in it, she was producing it. At a time when studios still doubted the box office power of women-led action movies, Drew pushed forward with unshakable belief. The result? A global hit that redefined female action heroes for the new millennium. She, along with Cameron Diaz and Lucy Liu, showed that women could be powerful, funny, sexy, and strong, all at once. Charlie's Angels was more than entertainment, it was empowerment. And at its core was Drew, the producer who dared to believe in women when the system didn't. This period marked the height of Drew Barrymore's comeback, but what made it extraordinary was how she stayed grounded through it all. Unlike her younger self, Drew now approached success with gratitude and awareness. She knew how easily fame could turn toxic. She surrounded herself with friends who encouraged authenticity over image, and she consciously avoided the temptations that had once consumed her. When asked in interviews about her past, she didn't hide it or apologize for it. Instead, she owned it with grace, saying, "I'm not ashamed of my history. It's made me who I am. And I like who I am." That radical self-acceptance became her superpower. By the time Drew Barrymore reached adulthood, her name carried both the sparkle of fame and the shadow of scandal. Hollywood had seen her fall, from a child star with golden curls to a teenager lost in nightclubs, drugs, and despair, but what no one could see was the quiet fire she carried within her. That fire was survival. When everyone dismissed her as a cautionary tale, she decided to rewrite the story. At just 15, Drew filed for legal emancipation from her parents, cutting ties not out of rebellion, but out of sheer will to protect herself. Imagine that, a teenager, barely old enough to drive, standing before a court and declaring she wanted to be responsible for her own life. That moment was her rebirth. She didn't have wealth, family, or even a home to lean on, but she had determination. She worked at coffee shops, cleaned apartments, and took any odd job she could just to survive. Yet in every late night and early morning, she whispered to herself, "This is not the end of my story." Hollywood, however, doesn't easily forgive or forget. Casting directors avoided her name, magazines branded her as washed up, and people laughed when she said she wanted to act again. But Drew had something stronger than reputation, she had resilience. She began auditioning again, not for fame, but for redemption. Every no became fuel. Every closed door became motivation. Then came her small but meaningful roles, in films like Poison Ivy and Gun Crazy. These weren't blockbusters, but they reignited a spark. People began to see not the troubled girl, but the raw, undeniable talent beneath the scars. Drew wasn't just acting, she was living through her characters, pouring her pain and healing into every scene. Slowly, she started to rebuild her career, brick by brick, heartbreak by heartbreak. But what truly changed everything was The Wedding Singer. When she starred alongside Adam Sandler, something magical happened. The world remembered why they fell in love with her in the first place. That charm, that warmth, that authenticity. Drew Barrymore wasn't acting, she was being. That movie reintroduced her to Hollywood, but more importantly, it reintroduced her to herself. Then came Never Been Kissed, Charlie's Angels, and 50 First Dates. Each film wasn't just a success, it was a symbol. A symbol that no matter how broken you are, you can rebuild, reinvent, and rise again. Drew turned her pain into power, her shame into purpose. But Drew's story isn't just about fame, it's about transformation. She didn't just return to Hollywood, she changed it. She launched her own production company, Flower Films, at a time when few women had that kind of control. She produced her own movies, hired women, and told stories that celebrated imperfection, growth, and love. She wasn't chasing success anymore, she was creating it.